And on this day of the Ortzeit of the Holy Rebbe, I want to say for me, Reb Zalman um, held both together. If I've ever met a person who modeled both grandeur and humility at the same time, this was the Rebbe. So, folks, today is a real special day. Good morning. Good morning. It's a real special day because it's the Yortzeit of Reb Zalman, Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi, of blessed memory. He was transitions to the next world 5 years ago today, on the 5th of Tammuz in July. And I'd like to dedicate the lesson to him. Reb Zalman was the Rebbe, the spiritual teacher, the inspirer, the friend, the Zaidi, as he liked to refer to himself, of hundreds of thousands of Jews and non-Jews from all different backgrounds around the world. And he was my teacher as well. I'm really honored and privileged to have been, to be in this community of the followers, the Hasidim of Reb Zalman. And I'd like to offer today's learning from the Slonimer, Netivot Shalom, Rabbi Shalom Noach Berzhovsky, the late of Jerusalem. Incidentally, Reb Zalman, after reading Netivot Shalom, and this is in the, I don't know exactly when, but in the mid to late 20th century, Reb Zalman went to see the Rebbe. He told the story. And I wish I could repeat the Yiddish because Reb Zalman was so great at telling things in the language that of that experience. I don't really know Yiddish, but Reb Zalman said that he came to the Rebbe and said, I read your book, and can you bless me that I can, in so many words, that I can live the truth that you are, that you're sharing in your book, in Netivot Shalom. And the Rebbe, the Netivot Shalom, the Slonimer Rebbe, grabbed his hand and turned to the shamash, to his assistant in the room, and said in Yiddish, "Oi, you see, here's a Jew who understands what I'm writing." Great story. I find the Netivot Shalom to be deeply, deeply inspiring. And I totally see why how Reb Zalman was so influenced and appreciated the teaching. So I'd like to offer this this little piece of Torah on the Slonimer on the Parsha Chukat, in memory and for the Aliyat HaNeshama, always higher and higher for the beloved Rebbe. Before we do that, let's light a Yortzeit candle. Nishmat Adam Ner Hashem. The soul of a human is the flame on God's candle. In memory of Moreno V'Rabbeinu, our teacher, Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi, May his memory be of a blessing. ולקח הכהן עץ ארץ ואזוב ושני תולעת והשליך אל תוך שרפת הפרה. And the Kohen, the high priest, took a piece of a tree, a branch of a cedar tree, and took moss from the ground, and a color, and a red worm, and tossed that into the fire that burnt the red heifer. So, just to put this all in context, the Parsha Chukat this week is telling us about the purification potion that was created by burning a perfectly red cow. And these little added ingredients were thrown in: the cedar, the moss, and the red worm. And after it was burned down to ashes, those ashes were retained to create a potion mixed with water in order to purify people who need to go purification for all kinds of different purposes, especially people who had to deal with the dead and needed to be purified in order to be eligible for temple worship. The Torah gets into the whole, the recipe and the procedure of this shamanic act of purification. V'amru Chazal, and the sages said in the Midrash, Im nitga'a ke'erez yeshpil atzmo ke'ezov. If a person is pride or arrogant like cedar, they should then learn how to humble themselves as moss. The cedar stands tall and proud, the moss is lowly and small and gets stepped on. And they derive this lesson about don't let your head swell, don't let your pride get the better of you. Look to the moss as as an example for balancing out pride. ביקשו מפרשים איך ארז המורה על גאות שהיא דבר שלילי מהווה חלק מטהרת הפרה כמו האזוב. So the commentators ask this question: how could cedar, which is a symbol in the Midrash for pride, which is, according to the Midrash, it's a negative thing, how could it be part of a potion, of an ash, that is there to be purified, to purify? Why mix in the symbolic ingredient for pride in purification? It's not clear. It doesn't seem right. The moss does seem right, because purification obviously has to do with humility, and the moss would be appropriate for that. But why the cedar? Apropos, I was at a permaculture convention yesterday, the PermaJam annual gathering in Middletown, New York, on a land outside of Middletown, New York. And at the campfire at night, there's a guy who stood up and shared poetry, spoken word, out of his committed to memory. It was amazing. I mean, the guy was just, his words, his poetry were just so fine-tuned. I mean, it was really brilliant, and he did it dramatically and completely out of memory. I met the guy in the morning, and I said, I acknowledged him. I said, listen, your poetry, thank you for that. It's really impactful. And the guy started kind of like going on a rant. He said, this is my first time doing this in front of a large group of people. Only this crowd here at Permajam, permaculture kind of activists and holy, holy rebels, against the food industrial complex. Really good stuff. I mean, the permaculture is the cutting edge of our chance to live sustainably on this planet. And he said, only here people would understand my poetry. There's no one out there who would. And I got, this cringe. I said, no. I said, let me tell you something. There are many people out there who are waiting to hear your poetry. And he accepted that. He realized that he was putting himself down. And then we talked about pride and humility, and how that was, his attitude was a kind of humility that's actually destructive. It is a hindrance rather than constructive. And that there's a kind of pride in the value of your mission, of your prophecy, a pride in knowing that you need to stand up to speak truth to power. That's not a time for humility. That's a time for pride. It's a time for standing up and saying, I'm having a deep sense of truth that has a contribution, a contribution of love and sustenance and progress and harmony for all people, of goodness. And I want to stand proud and proclaim, I have a dream. So it's interesting, just yesterday at the convention I had this conversation, and here we are. This is what this Latimer piece is about. Let me continue. ויש לומר, כמו שכתוב בספר הקדוש תולדות יעקב יוסף, as it's written in the Sefer, the creations of Yaakov Yosef, על מה שנאמר בתחילת הפרשה, what is said in the beginning of the parsha, וידבר אדוני אל משה ואל אהרון לאמור, זאת חוקת התורה. At the beginning of the parsha, where it says, this is the law of the Torah. Moshe hu midat anava v'shvelut. So he's interpreting. Moses is the quality of humbleness. וכתכתיב, והאיש משה ענב מאוד מכל האדם אשר פני האדמה, as it is written, Moses was the most humble person on the face of the earth, etc., etc. ואהרון הוא מידת גאות. And Aaron, Moses' brother, is the quality of pride. But not just pride, but holy pride. So the quality of Aaron is holy pride. And this is an important distinction. כדכתיב, ועשית בגדי קודש לאהרון אחיך לכבוד ולתפארת, as it's written in the Chumash, make vestments, garments for your brother Aaron, the holy priest, for glory and honor, שהוא עניין גדלות וגאות, which is the essence of the office. The high office of the high priest has to do with grandeur and pride. It's so beautiful. I mean, we can see where this is going already, right? That pride is not, there's no like just one shade of pride. There's many shades of pride. There's a spectrum, and there's a positive end, an important end of that spectrum. ורק על ידי בית המידות של משה ואהרון יחדיו יש בזה שלמות. And only when we combine those two qualities of Moses and Aaron, holy humility and holy pride, then we get a wholeness, we get a completeness. אבל כל מידה בפני עצמה יש בה צד, גם צד חיסרון. But each quality onto its own has a negative side. This beautiful yin and yang. If a person is only holding on to manifesting humility alone, then one's Yetzer Hara, and I want to again translate with nuance here. So Yetzer Hara is the evil inclination, but I want to, in this context, say it is the low self-esteem, the force in us that is self-deprecating, that is not self-loving. That's the Yetzer Hara in this context. So the Yetzer Hara here will humiliate that person and tell him that he is not, or she, are not worthy of holiness. And is not worthy of elevating him or herself in the divine, on the divine path. What's spiritual work? Me? I'm not into that stuff. I don't have it. I'm too far gone. Is that humility? That's the wrong kind of humility, right? That's the Yetzer Hara grabbing onto a person who's so steep, so involved, so identified with their humility, so to speak, that it's really destructive instead of constructive, really. And you and I have a piece of that in ourselves. Let's admit it, because that's the only way to get over it. And if a person is holding on to the quality of holy pride and in hubris that would come along with that, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, in this context I want to call the evil inclination the narrow-minded, self-indulgent part. Yachol lehagis et rucho, can make his spirit crude. Listen to that. If one is only in that mode of, oh, I'm holy moly, I love this, being high on holiness. So the Yetzer Hara, and some of us have that talent. Some of us really appreciate sanctity. We appreciate spirituality. We appreciate proclaiming it. It's especially a pitfall for rabbis and other clergy. I have the holy mission of standing in front of the congregation and being glorious. And then, that little piece in you, that's there to trip you, that's there wants to gobble all that up and go like, whoa, it's like my head, I enjoy this kind of self-indulgence, this getting swollen, so high on myself, can make your spirit crude, and we call that spiritual materialism. By the way, it reminds me that, people sometimes ask, how do you know if somebody's really a Kabbalist, right? I'd really like to meet an authentic Jewish holy man. How can I meet that person? So the answer I've heard, which I like the most, is you can bet that a person who advertises him or herself as a Kabbalist, that they're not. That's a sure way to know. Because once a person advertises, I'm a little guilty myself, Once a person advertises, I'm a Kabbalist, you can tell that they're not it. because they're exactly what they're talking about here, right? I'm just too happy about myself being, carrying the title. So back to the Slonomer here. So the Yetzer Hara can make your spirit crude, thus shechshov shu kvar kadosh v'tahor, such that you think about yourself. He or she thinks about him or herself that he or she is already holy and pure. Ela tzarich le'chos b'bet hamidot yachad. But a person needs to hold on to both those qualities together. El Moshe ve'el Aharon. Be like Moses and be like Aaron together. Midat hashvelut u'midat geut hakdusha v'itparut. The quality of humility and the quality of holy pride and glorification. Ki Yehudi mitzad hachomer shelo haro be'emet shafel. Because a Jew or a person, I'm going to open this tent wide to all our brothers and sisters of all human persuasions. Hareu be'emet mitzad hachomer shelo hareu be'emet shafel. From the aspect of our physicality, of our presence in this world, in ordinary consciousness, truly we are humble. Ach mitzad nishmato, shi chelek elo mimal, but from the aspect of us which is our soul, a portion of the God on high, hareu gadol me'od. Then, from that aspect, a person is great, is infinitely great. When a person holds on to these two qualities, as we described, ke'echad, simultaneously at the same time, then this is a complete service of the divine, or a complete spiritual path. Just such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful teaching. How many times have you and I fallen into one side in excess or the other side in excess? How many times have we failed by being either too humble or too full of hubris? I know I certainly have. And on this day of the Yortzeit of the Holy Rebbe, I want to say for me, Reb Zalman held both together. If I've ever met a person who modeled both grandeur and humility at the same time, this was the Rebbe. In fact, this is why I followed him. When I met Reb Zalman, I was in my 20s. I was a spiritual seeker, and I wouldn't have qualified that at the time, but I was looking for a teacher. The thing is, I was guru averse. That was my own pride. I was too full of myself, and nobody's going to lord over me. I didn't trust that there was somebody out there that I would, submit to or call my teacher. I was too full of the notion that I am my own person. I'm, the John Wayne Marlboro man, the lone rider conquering my universe. And I've studied with spiritual teachers, but I've never really opened myself up to, being a follower as such. When I met Reb Zalman, I had that aversion, that suspicion. But nevertheless, I remember it was at my first Kala in Philadelphia. It was in 1991. And I was so inspired by him, by his talks and by his humor and by his kind of kindness of heart and love that he expressed both privately and publicly, And there was an opportunity to sign up for a personal audience with him. He would see people for 15-minute slots, and I signed up for that. And this was towards the end of the week-long conference with many, many people. I think there were about 300 people at that conference. And I was so inspired, and I was so kind of melting into the teaching and into the joys of Jewishing that we're all practicing together, the discovery of a way of being authentic and spiritually inclined, and yet Jewish, and studying Torah, and is bringing together all these different pieces of things that I had learned to love and was inspired by Eastern religion and meditations and Western self-improvement and humanistic psychology and love of nature and environmental concern and feminism and progressive politics and peace work and all these things have just converged. And I realized that Reb Zalman was leading the pack. And at the time, I was already signed up to go to college, to university in Israel. And when I was at the personal audience with him, I said, Reb Zalman, I have a dilemma. I'm so inspired by what's happening here at the conference that I want to continue doing this. I want to learn more about your community. I want to be your student. I broke from pattern there. I would like to have you as my teacher, I said to him. But I'm already signed up to university in Haifa in Israel, and I already have my plans to move there in a couple of months. And Reb Zalman said to me, he said, you don't need a guru. You don't need to sit at the feet of the teacher. This is not how things work anymore. Go continue with your plans. Go to school. In Haifa. No rush. If you have a question, just give me a call. I'm a telephone call away. I walked out of that meeting and I realized, what did I just do? I hate gurus. I just told the man that I want to be a student. And he did not take me as a student. He did not say, come on and join my, come cozy up with me, be in the inner circle, be my student, and let me, be Lord over you, be your guru, and follow my every command. He did not say that. And at that moment, when he actually rejected my willingness to plug in and work for him, that's when he became my real Rebbe. For 30-some years, may his memory be a blessing. With that, let us all be blessed that we live our lives in a balance, especially our spiritual path. It is a tightrope. Let us hold Aaron on this side, Moses on this side, and walk with joy. Shalom.